2, 1. Kenny Riley.
Hey.
It is so cool to meet you. Thank you again for hosting me.
Absolutely.
This is seriously this is just, it's a perfect mixture of state of the art and just badass.
Yeah, just state of the badass.
This is awesome. So for everyone listening right now on Spotify, move over to YouTube because this place is phenomenal. This is without a doubt the best backdrop I've ever had to a podcast.
Oh, great.
And
it's all the stuff my wife won't let me put up at home.
And this is phenomenal. Like I was saying off camera, thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to do this. I know you're a man with a packed schedule. I want to give a quick shout out to the guys over in the slums of Harvard.
Yeah.
They could not sing your praises any higher.
Oh, that was sweet.
And almost, I'd say after like the second episode I did with those guys, they were like, all right, when are you having Kenny on? And then I end up meeting up with the Mangos and they're like, all right, when are you having Kenny on? And because there's like maybe 3 or 4 guests that get asked about over and over before I eventually had them, and you're in that top 3. You might be number 1.
Oh, awesome.
Between you and Amanda from the Red Lights, for sure.
Yeah, we just did some songs with her. I just did some songs with them. What a great band.
They're
really
killers.
Just fantastic people, too.
So I'm going to be mindful of your time, but I really want to get into you, your life, what has led you here in New Mexico. Born and raised in Compton.
Yeah, I know.
How was that?
Well, it was...
What year? Let's start with the year, with the era.
Well, I was born in 58, so from 58 to, 7th grade, I lived in Compton. So that would, I don't know what the years would be because I'm not really good with that. But right up to 7th grade, 7th, 8th grade, I got in some serious trouble. Got thrown in California Youth Authority for doing bad things. So the way I got out of Compton was when I got out of jail at 18. My mother had moved to Orange County. So that's how I ended up getting out of the hood, you know.
And how old were you when you initially got
in trouble?
Yeah.
15.
15? As much as you're willing to speak about that, what was the experience like being in a youth penitentiary, especially back then?
It wasn't so bad, but the problem with California Youth Authority is connected to Chino Prison, so it's hard time. So you sometimes eat meals with the adults.
No shit.
And so, I got into pretty violent, kind of like the neighborhood. It wasn't really much different. A lot of violence, learning how to fight even if you didn't want to. I'm not really into fighting, but, my brother was. He's a fighter, still is, but he protected me a lot, and then I just had to learn how to fight. Otherwise, I probably would have been a whole different person. But that's an interesting question. But I would say I did some violent things when I was 15. Like I said, they threw me in California Youth Authority. When I was there, I just accidentally got into a fight. The guy tried to take my food, and I went to grab him because I knew that I had to be aggressive right away.
And was this an interaction with an adult or someone that was underage as well?
He's much older. Okay. He's probably 18 or 19. And so he grabbed my hair, so I turned around to try to grab his face, and my thumb went into his eye, and his eye popped out. And so from that point on, I was safe. People just left me alone as the crazy little Irish kid and let me work in the library. So I was lucky enough to not have to go through a ton of, doing gang stuff or any of that other stuff. People just left me alone. So
you hear a lot about youth getting imprisoned, and there's a lot of arguments as to why, what perpetuates it. In that era, for lack of a better phrase, people just didn't really care.
No.
Right? It was just like, oh, they're just these little messed up kids. They're always going to be violent, whatever.
But there's lots of stats out there, but you can't really believe stats anymore, can you? I mean, everybody makes their own stats. But, I was a classic single-parent child. My mom had married a few times, and so I was kind of a single kid, latchkey kid, living in a really bad neighborhood. And life without a real father can definitely tend to make boys be criminals. just based on not having any social structure to teach how to function.
I'm proud to announce that the podcast is now officially sponsored by the fine people over at Chop Chili Company. Guys, this is some of the best chili you can get here in the state of New Mexico, and they are online as well as in stores. They can be found at Smith's, Albertsons, Sprouts, John Brooks, and Lowe's Corner Market. They have 3 amazing flavors that you see here, and they also have frozen green chili that you can get online. Go on over to the website, chopchilico.com, and get yourself some amazing chili today. Podcast is now officially sponsored by the amazing people over at High Desert Relief, a premier herbal destination right here in the state of New Mexico. They have extremely well-trained and knowledgeable staff that are more than happy to help you find what you're looking for or try something that you maybe have never thought of. They have 2 locations here in Albuquerque, 1 in Santa Fe. All 3 will be listed right here and in the description of this episode. All 3 offering legendary products at absolutely legendary prices, including this awesome merch that they were so kind enough to gift me here. All of this can be found at all 3 of their locations. Again, big thank you to the guys over at HDR for supporting. Now back to the episode.
And
it's not only that, because I completely agree, first of all, and you're right, especially the time we live now, statistics get wonky, but the top 2 things that put men in prison are free time and no father. And when you put those things together, you typically, because men have, obviously, which is
never
the way
thought of that. The free time thing, that's cool.
It was just the way that we're built, right? Yeah. With our testosterone, we got to go put that into something.
Yeah.
And that's why you find a lot, especially like here in Albuquerque, while a big part of our culture obviously is crime, but lateral to that, a big part of our culture is combat sports. And you'll find that that's why there's a lot of combat sports gyms, and why a lot of them do very well in places like, it's called like the South Valley, or even obviously places like Rio Rancho, where they have like the higher end ones. But like you'll find a lot of boxing gyms and jiu-jitsu gyms in the South Valley, lower income areas, just because parents know that this kid, let's say 15-year-old kid who's maybe getting into some trouble at school, maybe got trouble for punching somebody, stabbing somebody here in Albuquerque, and it's like, okay, well, we need to have them fill their free time, put that negative energy into something, turn into positive.
Yeah, that's what happened to me in California Youth Authority. The biggest thing that changed my life was there's this guy, counselor, hippie dude, and he said, "Listen, I'm going to play you a song." So he actually brought a little record player, and he played me "Desperado" by the Eagles. And it affected me, not just because he played the song for me, but because he cared enough to play the song for me. So I cared enough to listen, because I was pretty jaded at that point as a child, not caring and, disassociated with the world, thinking you had to be out for yourself and that's it. So when he did that, it was just an act of kindness. It's become one of my favorite songs of all time, but I can understand why he would want to play that for me. But that's what changed my life to music.
How long was this person in your life for?
A few years. He was counselor there for about a year, but it was about 4 months in, I kept getting in trouble because I would when I would clean up the guards area, because I was a youth, I would sneak the cigarette butts, and I would take the tobacco out of each cigarette butt and roll it in Bible paper, because little pocket Bibles, and roll cigarettes, and then put a piece of tin foil on the end of a toothbrush and stick it in the plug, and it would heat up red hot, and I could smoke. So they couldn't figure out how I did that, right? How's he? I can't find any matches in there, and so.
You had to MacGyver yourself a cigarette. Well, I forget what show it is, but I remember there's this funny moment where a guy's like, "Yeah, if there's this many ingredients to a Big Mac, so if you just buy a Big Mac every day, take one ingredient out, at the end of the week, you have a free Big Mac."
That's actually kind of genius.
So okay.
So he was in my life for about a year, but That was just a moment that we had because I got in trouble because you could smell the tobacco in my room, right? How's he doing this? And so I was in kind of like, I guess it would be considered, where they put you by yourself, like punishment.
Solitary.
Yeah, it was kind of solitary confinement. Not really. You had a window, and it wasn't like a black room.
But they did that to you as a kid.
Yeah.
How long did you have to?
I was in there for 2 or 3 days, and then he came to me in that situation and played the song for me. I don't know who else he did it for, but that's when I picked up a guitar. I started playing. That moment in time affected me so much that I started to play guitar and sing and do, and I also had an incredible love for electronics. So the evenness of the electronics and the music go together to make my job, what I do, perfect, right? So
you're spending, let's just round up and say 3 days.
Yeah.
3 days in solitary confinement as an adolescent. Because for me, the more that I look into the criminal justice system, the more I look into that, and the more that I read about the effects of solitary confinement, the more I hate it.
Yeah.
And so you said you picked up guitar after that. Were you able to entertain yourself at all for those 3 days, or were you just sitting there in a room with a window? No, that was it,
pretty much. You're in a room, but it's not like a dark room where you have to pee in a vent, and it was a room.
Yeah.
But you just weren't around anyone.
Yeah. Cutting off, because again, humans are animals, right?
Yeah, cutting me off from the rest of the social people. Now, that obviously became illegal eventually, I'm sure, but this was in Los Angeles, in Chino Prison, which is outside in California, which, was all experimental at that time, I think, confining people, and because it was a violent crime that I did, they stuck me there. Yeah. So,
okay. And don't get me wrong, I think there's a lot less than people or just media sources want you to believe, because fear porn is a real thing.
Yeah.
There are people out there that are either so mentally absent that they need to get removed from population, not necessarily not like killed or anything, but just removed from population because they are a genuine danger to others, and more often than not, they're a danger to themselves. A, and then B, you do have people that if you just put them in public, they want to hurt people. That's just how they are.
Yeah,
and again,
I have been face to face with a lot of that growing up.
That's a real
violent
thing.
People, and evil is real, and and I've seen it up close and personal, and it does exist. It's not just like a guy, but you can see it in their face. You know what I mean? My brother saved me from a situation like that where a guy's just pure evil. There's just no way. There's no way else to put it. I don't know where he came from, what he did, but my brother took care of the problem. But the bottom line is, yes. Back to the solitary confinement thing. I didn't seem to be affected by it because I was already antisocial based on who I was as an individual.
And I wonder how much of it too was you're still maturing.
I was just mad because I couldn't smoke cigarettes anymore. Really, that's...
Well, one of the worst things you can do to somebody is take away their new favorite hobby.
Exactly.
Well, I wonder too... I don't want to stay on this for too long, of course, but I wonder how much of it too was you're still maturing, you're still going through puberty. Your brain is still in the absorbing stage. It's not necessarily in the okay, this is my routine. This is what I like. This is what I don't like. You took away the thing that I like. Oh no, that type of stuff. You're not. And being a kid that's more disagreeable, being a kid that doesn't like to socialize very much.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily surprising that it didn't affect you too much it didn't hurt that much in the moment, and the fact that it only lasted up to 72 hours. One of the last things I want to ask you about this part of your life is product of your environment. Do you feel like a lot of what got you into trouble was the environment you were in? Because I hear it again, where a lot of kids
hard to say.
Feel helpless. They feel like, single parent, my mom is working a lot to keep us afloat. And then as you're growing up, you're seeing the effects of that on her, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
And then you're in one of the most violent cities in the country.
True.
And
that didn't help.
So now you're looking around you said it yourself a little bit ago that you're living in an environment where you're it's survival of the fittest. You got to look out for yourself.
Yeah.
No one's really doing it for me.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it was an alchemy of all of that kind of led you? Of course, you made your own decisions.
Yeah.
But there's
not good ones either.
Yeah, there's a breadcrumb trail that led to you.
Yeah, I always always feel like, bring in the G word, that God was watching over me and developing my character. Without every piece of character that I have in my life and what I've been through, I wouldn't be who I am today. Yeah. So I don't look at it as a negative thing.
Yeah.
I got a funny story, though. When I did finally get out, my mom had moved from Los Angeles to Orange County, which is very milquetoast white neighborhood, a super, upper middle class neighborhood.
Their favorite seasonings.
And we lived in the cheapest
salt.
apartments in there. But I got out. She said you could stay with me for a while till you get your life together, or whatever. So I remember the first night I was there. We're in the apartment, and I said, "Mom, do you have any sodas or anything?" She goes, "No, you can walk down the street and get sodas." And I said, "It's nighttime. We can't go outside." This is how culture shock it was.
Yeah.
And so I must have looked really stupid every time a car came by. I'm hiding behind a bush, and then I get to the store, and there's like no bulletproof, propylene or whatever windows in front of I'm paying for the soda. So I was absolutely, I always thought that the Brady Bunch was only on TV, that life didn't really exist.
Right.
I mean, that's how the culture had changed. Now, of course, you can go on the internet and see all lifestyles all the time. But back then it was like whatever you had on TV was Gilligan's Island and
Right.
and the Brady Bunch and
growing up watching all that stuff probably seemed more like a fantasy than a reality.
That's what I'm saying is I had no idea that there were places that were safe that you could walk around at night,
Were you raised in a religious household? Was that something that was thrust upon you, or something you had to find yourself?
The closest I came to religion, my grandfather was Red Campbell, famous bare-fisted boxer. And he had a picture of Jesus in the gold frame, and he had a picture of Kennedy in the gold frame right next to it. So those are on the same level in my household.
Two individuals killed by a government for trying to do the right thing.
Exactly.
Go figure. Go figure.
Anyway, so no, I wasn't. I didn't have an encounter with God till I was in my early 20s. That's what changed my life.
So you end up getting out of prison, or the youth penitentiary, moving with your mom. How long are you staying in California before you make your first move out?
I didn't leave California till 1985.
What did you find yourself doing in that young 20s?
And I ended up building a recording studio with a guy named Doug Doyle. And the movie the Jesus Revolution?
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it.
It's a big movie. It's about the Calvary Chapel movement of Christianity in between 71 and 83 or 4. And I happened to be part of the early 80s movement of that thing that didn't come out in the movie. They're actually doing a movie right now.
Oh, cool.
About that period of time. But a friend of mine, Doug Doyle, I met Jesus, and we opened a recording studio in Orange County down in Newport Beach or Costa Mesa, and ended up recording all those early Christian punk records, like before the Christian industry was even alive.
Right.
And so we created, God, giving God the credit on everything. We created everything out of that little studio, all those bands, Altar Boys, Crumbacher, Undercover. I mean, all these bands that became huge national hits were just recorded in a dumb little studio that we built in a garage, a double garage. And so I went through some serious problems in the mid-'80s and started like the first Christian rock band as a trio with tats and piercings. There were rock bands that were Christian, but it was the first go to colleges and bars and and just talk about God to people. And
and to make that distinction, these are groups that the content of their music was gospel and religious based. It wasn't just Christians that made a band. It was people that are Christians in a band. Now their music is actually about God.
Yes. So it's a different thing, and like I said, I don't want to get people to think that I'm some sort of a religious nut. I'm a Jesus freak, but not in the way most people would perceive it. It's more, I'm a realist. I believe that all music comes from God, no matter what it is. It comes from God. and it falls on us, and we either give them the credit for it or not, but everyone gets it. All right? So I just want to make that clear before I start. And then in 85, I went through a bad relationship thing, and I decided that I wanted to be the best engineer in the world, so I moved to New York City.
And how old are you at this point?
26, 27.
That's awesome.
In that neighborhood.
So zeroing in a little bit more on the Christian punk bands that are coming through your studio.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the studio a little bit.
Yeah.
You and your friend Doug, you have the idea.
He passed away a few years back, by the way.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
You guys, whose idea was it first?
Well, here's what happened.
What
happened is I had an experience with God, so I was just inundated and enlightened and just crazy. Had a crazy moment. It was super awesome. Changed my life. Everything had tons of clarity. I at that time there were no like rock bands, like tatted rock bands playing, gospel music or talking about God. And so I felt directed to do that. Spoken by God to just do that. So I got some guys together and we started doing that. So to make the point clear, Doug Doyle came in life. I'm like, okay, so I'm having a conversation with God, and I know I'm crazy Irishman. But I'm like, well, I need a studio now, and that's expensive. That time studios were expensive. I had like a couple of cassette decks and a mixer, and I would experiment. I was always experimenting with how to record things. And Doug Doyle had a studio he had shut down. And it was shut down and just needed repairs, and someone else had owned it prior in these two garages. So, I met him. He called me. He goes, "Hey, man, I hear you, blah, blah, blah. Well, we set up the studio, make it go, and we can make a go at it." So I said, sure. So I came over and we, turned the lights on, got to work. In fact, there's a couple of channels up there of the original console we built.
That's awesome.
There, a little 8-track 1-inch tape machine, and we did all those records that way. But that's how it happened. It was already kind of a shell that someone had tried to build, and then we just turned it into something else. But it still was just a little crap hole. It was a little crap hole, a hole in the wall, junky place, down by the beach, and all these bands recorded there. It was crazy.
Well, I have a theory. Well, it's a theory and a belief system, especially after doing the podcast for a few years now. Because a lot of people go into a project really wanting to do it big right off the bat. And really wanting to like hit whatever markers they have in their head as like this is gonna mark financial success. This is gonna mark success of status. This is gonna whatever these weird like checklist things are, right? These markers.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people. I think God gives you what you're ready for.
Exactly. Oh, absolutely.
That's my first belief system. I think God gives you what you're
no more than you can handle.
Yeah, exactly what you're ready for. And if there's something big, like a bigger artist you want to like for your artist you want to record with, or better equipment you want to use, you're not ready for that yet.
Yeah.
So A, and then B, I feel like you lose. I think appreciation for especially like an art form or a craft that you have to do with your head, like you have to build yourself one way or another.
Yeah.
There's an appreciation for it when you kind of have to struggle in the beginning. You have to build it yourself. You have to make do with what you have and do the best with it.
Yeah.
Because don't get me wrong, I'm sure that it would have been awesome back then if somebody wrote you guys $100,000 check to go buy all the great stuff.
Wouldn't have been the same.
But exactly, it wouldn't have been the same. You probably wouldn't have known what to do with half of it.
Exactly.
And then now you're just like, well, now like
you must have been there. You were there. I'm kidding.
But you're like, well, we have all this access, but what do we do with it, right? So being able to grow, build yourself with that, and then everything because not only because it was meant for you, you were good at it. Everything that was supposed to come to you came.
Yeah.
Because clearly looking around, you stayed on the right.
What you were designed to do. That is the biggest mistake most people make when they say, well, I don't want to become Christian because I have to become something I'm not. It's the opposite. God says, listen, I created everybody individually as a purpose. Now, of course, the church today needs some help because they want you to speak Christianese and act a certain way and be a certain way, or you can't be part of their social club. And that's an issue.
Yeah.
But what God is really saying is, I created you. I know everything about you. I'm going to make you into what you're supposed to be. You just have to allow me to do it. And that's most people's biggest fear. They don't want to take the swan dive. They don't want to swan dive into the abyss. But once you do, your life will change forever. But you got to be able to take that swan dive and go, oh, I got this and I got... No. When your heart, what is your heart telling you to do? Do this. If you do this, great things will happen. Like, for instance, I'm 58. I'm going to give you a scenario. 58 years old. I have my own room. I'm pretty comfortable with my wife, and my children are growing up here. I love Albuquerque. I love the food here. This is my favorite place on the planet. And I believe God says to me, I want you to open a studio. And I'm like, God, I'm arguing. You want me to open a studio when all the studios are closing? Is this not crazy? Take all your money, and I want you to invest. So, okay, God, challenge. I want an old Adobe by the river. Never happened. I don't have that kind of money. Nobody, that kind of money is a lot of money, right? So my wife and I are driving up Rio Grande one day, and there's bamboo in the front of the studio here, and the wind blows the bamboo back, and it says "For sale by owner," pops out, and then goes back. And stop the car! So we stopped the car. This is a true story. And I get out, and I jumped a little fence because we put all this fencing up, and I walk over and I look at this building, and I go, "No way! This is the place. This is the place." And she's like, "What?" I said, "This is the place." So my business partner, Drew, who I can't thank enough. He's just the most wonderful business partner you could ever have. I called him and I said, "Drew," I said, "I found it." And even the real estate agent came in there with me because it was such a dump. It had been abandoned. There was animals living in it and stuff. Standing in the middle of the room, and the agent says, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm telling you, this is the place. This place has magic in it. It's magic. I'm telling you, it's where New Mexico Sound is going to be discovered. We're going to find it here." And so I think we have, but still, the story is, at my age, taking a swan dive at 58 to invest everything that I have to do this. And all my vision is to give back to the local bands. I wanted to give back to this community because I've fallen in love with it. I've been here 28 years. I've been here since 1994. But I've fallen in love with the community so much that I wanted to build a place that bands didn't have to leave town. They could just keep developing here and do this in a professional studio. Not that there's not professional studios here. I don't mean to seem like I'm the only guy or whatever, but...
And I definitely want to cover that because I think the ethos behind what you're doing here is beautiful. Not only from what I've heard from you, but just from what I've heard with friends that I've made, been very thankful to make, but friends that I've made that have worked with you.
Yeah.
I think what you're building here is absolutely beautiful, and it's a cornerstone of what's happening right now and what's going to continue to evolve. But back to where you were in your 20s, garage.
Oh, yeah. Garage
studio.
Yeah.
Building it brick by brick. Trying to, again, MacGyver yourself together with your friend. What were some of the key learning moments that you can look back on now when you're recording those older, the starting punk bands that you mentioned?
Yeah.
What are some of the key learning moments that you look back on? It's like, man, like if we didn't experience these issues or if we didn't experience these successes, these were like the key foundations that built the house we're in now, both literally and figuratively.
Well, I hate to be vague about it, but I can connect. It's funny as I connect it all the way back to my, being born at St. Francis Hospital in Linwood, Compton area. You know what I mean? It all came to that. When you don't have money, you learn how to fix things. You become mechanical just based on the fact that you don't have nothing if you can't fix it. Right. So all those things that came up in my ability to be able to take an electronic device apart when I'm a kid and put it back together. Yeah. Those are things. Those are gifts.
Because what I think is why I was really excited to do this interview just in general because of your background as being a music producer.
Yeah.
What I think is so interesting about your profession is music producers. So let's do an example with one of the punk bands you're working with in your 20s.
Yeah.
I'd imagine that some of those bands are the same age, plus or minus 3 to 4 years, as like the slums of Harvard. They're in the same age group. The only difference now is you're decades older.
Yeah.
And now you're getting to see what, you're able to bring decades and decades of knowledge. That age group has stayed the same,
You know,
but you've aged and gotten wiser.
the interesting thing is what I do is an older dude's game. I'm the youngest of the guys I know that still do this. So I'm like the youngster. The guy I learned from, Bob Rosa, if you look him up, guys, go to bobrosa.com, look up his discography. I'm talking everything from Mick Jagger to Prince to Michael Jackson. He's mixed, and he's the guy I worked for and learned from in New York when I lived there. That's a whole nother 9 years or 10 years or so of my life living in New York City. In '86, I left California, disgruntled, had issues with God at that point.
What made you disgruntled with California, or was it life?
It wasn't that. It was I went through a bad patch relationship. I don't want to really talk about, but yeah, disgruntled. I got disgruntled with God because I felt like I was working and for Him, and He didn't let me down or whatever. We've all felt that way, I'm sure, over time. But I just packed up my stuff with money, and I just moved to New York City. I said, I'm going to be the best engineer that ever walked the planet. That was my goal. Stupid. Well, anyway, so...
What was the parting ways like with Doug? You said his name?
Well, Dougie was still doing his own thing. You know, for me, I was still hybrid. I still was in bands and also engineering. So I was doing both. When I moved to New York City, I just focused completely on audio.
Okay.
No playing. And I ended up being in a band in New York too, but that's a whole nother story.
Was there a conversation between you and Doug when you decided that you're going to move to New York?
Yeah.
Because you speak, and I want to dig into that a little bit just because you speak of that friendship with such reverence.
Yeah.
That I'd imagine that. Well, I don't want to speak for you, but I would just imagine that there's a lot of. It was bittersweet.
It was absolutely. He said, "Don't go." Just but he would be the first to admit if he were alive that it was a selfish thing, just because we were partners, friends. There were a lot of folks that I talked to at that time, but I said I just need to be the best at what I do. If I'm going to do this, I want to be the best at it, and of course I'm still searching for that. But I wanted to be the best at engineering and producing. And to get back to your question, Slums now, being a lot like that, I'm able to, I'd say 60% of what I do in production is dealing with personalities, making them feel comfortable enough like they're sitting in their own living room with their dad or their brother or someone they like. And that you get the best performances out of people that way.
And that's interesting to hear coming from someone that grew up very in the, if personality is a spectrum and one side is closed off to the world, I don't want anybody, and the other one is I want to meet everyone and know everyone, you kind of fell more on the side of like more antisocial, more not really, that type of stuff. So to see an evolution of somebody turn into like more than half of my job. Well, dealing and managing personalities. That's an interesting evolution.
It's an ambassador quality, I call it. It's something that was always there and maybe would have been there sooner had I not grown up in a neighborhood where I was trying to just survive.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? It's interesting, and it may be some weird mental disease that I have, but I feel like I can stand outside myself and look at all those things that happened to me and be a third person. Not be that person that's affected or hurt or whatever. And that may be some weird thing that I may deal with. I mean, I'm old enough now where I'm like, I don't, people, they see my new tattoos and you say, you're going to regret that when you get older. Wow. Dude, too late. Anyway, so, that being said, the ambassador quality is definitely a gift, but also being able to look inside someone's head and say, you know what, here's how I look at it. When a band walks in here, as a producer, my job...
Please continue. I'm just going to check cameras and stuff, but please continue.
My job is basically a band comes in and they're going to paint a painting, right? And they honor me by allowing me to hold the brush. So now I'm brushing... They're saying, no, we want to brush this way. So I'm brushing, and I'm brushing, and I'm brushing. Anyway, so that's kind of how I look at it. So I consider it an honor that they're allowing me to hold the brush while I paint their painting.
And what I'm getting, a common denominator in not only just the way you articulate yourself, but the way that you're just articulating your experiences and the way you view things.
Yeah.
It's a lot of perceptiveness and it's a lot of wisdom. And specifically when you mention being able to be that own third person from your own experience.
Yeah.
And then recognizing that, there is an evolution here. I'm not what I was back then. Like being able to see that in yourself, there's a lot of forgiveness in that. And there's a lot of, maybe say like, oh yeah, like on the negative side of things, like a lot of forgiveness.
Yeah.
But then on the positive side of things, like, yeah, I did that stuff.
Yeah.
Like I was able to accomplish these things. I was able to move through. I was able to build this production studio, recording studio in a garage with my close friend.
Yeah.
And being able to take onus of that. Because I don't know, obviously I can't speak for you, but I know for myself, that's been a real issue in like accepting successes.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a hard one. That's a hard one.
Like recognize like, oh, wait, no, I did that.
Yeah.
Or I am doing, or I will do. I now have the ability to.
Yeah.
Like a video game. Like you're unlocking these new levels you're now able to have access to.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of wisdom in that, and that's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite Joe Rogan quotes. I forget what podcast he went on, but he was like, "Yeah, you're not that person. You have the ability to move on, move on from your mistakes. You don't have to be your mistakes."
Yeah. The thing is that when you have an experience with God, if He forgives you and you don't forgive you, then you're in sin. Isn't that weird? It's like, no, you have to forgive yourself.
Yeah.
Because He forgave you. So what are you bigger than God?
You think you know better.
I'm not going to forgive me.
Yeah.
I mean, you just ain't going to do that. So, So the bottom line, there's a song. I was really, when I was a kid, I was in love. I bought lots of records because I lived in my own world. But I bought a record by Sly and the Family Stone, and there's a song called, I think it's called The Stand, or just Stand. And there's a line in that song that says, "You have you to complete, and there is no deal." That's such a powerful line, because you have to complete you. You're here, and you have to. We're all in like this big beehive, and all our wings are buzzing together. But you still have to have an individual goal and thought, right?
How old were you when you heard that record or that line? Let's say.
I was, I don't know, 67. So I was probably 10 or 11. I bought lots of records.
Beautiful.
I just lived in that, in the music. I just inundated myself with music.
That's one of my favorite things. I'm a very much an enjoyer of music, not a creator or a producer of it. But what I love about, especially growing up on the tail end of like CDs, is having like one of my favorite records of all time is Dookie by Green Day. And just having, because I liked it as a little kid. I remember I think I was 7, 8 years old, around there. And I loved it as a kid. I was like, oh, this sounds cool. I got that and The Sickness by Disturbed on the same day.
Oh, yeah. Very good records.
Yeah, and I was like, shit, like I love these. But then like as I grew up, specifically with Dookie, it's like, oh, the things these guys are talking about, oh, shit.
You actually start listening to the lyrics. And, I was so inundated, and I call it a gifting, but I would sleep with the little AM transistor radio in my ear. Music was everything to me. It was the only thing in my life that was consistent and never lied. So music was always, something that was always, I was always absorbing it. Even in the car, I'd be listen to this song, and everybody else would be talking, and like, no, listen to this song, man. And, and I've always been like that. I've always been real serious about listening and what is that? Oh, it's a tambourine. Oh, I figured it out. That's a little loud, I think, whatever. So it's funny, that the two loves that seem opposite, left and right brain, electronics and music combined, give me the perspective that that I need in order to do my job and feel complete.
When I feel now more than ever, it's rare for someone to be in a position like that, regardless of what they're doing with their life, right? I think it's rare, especially today, for someone to be able to find something in their life that they truly love.
Yeah.
And they love doing, whether they're making money off of it or not.
Well, see, we say, hey, Kenny, you going to retire? I am. I'm retired. I've been doing this for it's now 43 years.
It's a wonderful blessing that you have. And, you know, whether someone listening to this believes in God or not, whatever, for the purpose of this conversation, of course, what we're using is God, but whatever someone listening replaces that with, whatever it is that controls this thing we're on, if you align yourself with that massive force,
I said you have unit complete and there is no deal.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so whatever it is, I'm not going to, if I'm in the beehive with you, I'm not going to buzz your wings.
Yeah.
You got to complete yourself. So whatever that is, however you need to do that, you do it. This is my doing, right? This is how I do it. This is how God created me to do this. It may not be God that created me. Maybe it's just you that created you to do that, and that may be your deal. Right. I would never make a judgment call. There's one really important scripture that most Christians miss, and that is this. That Jesus said he will judge you the way you judge others. So you better be really freaking careful about what you say to some other individual, because you will be judged. And I know me. Yeah. And I know my heart, and I know my life, and I'm like, I ain't judging zip on anybody for any reason. Not happening.
And that's a quality you don't find too much in a modern church.
No, that's, like I said, we're supposed to, as Christians, you're supposed to love the bride, but just remember this: when they call it the bride, if the bride is mentally sick, you separate until it's better. So that's me. I'm somewhat of an outcast. I don't speak Christianese. I'm not that guy. But I know that I know that I know for whatever reason.
Yeah. And
everything around me rotates around that. Everything here. When I pull up a song every morning, I mix probably 4 songs a day and track all day. It's what I do every day of my life, except for Sundays. My lovely wife keeps me home on Sundays so that I rest, or I wouldn't. Anyway.
Your door locks from the outside.
Yeah. I always look up, because I know that everything that I do and have rotates around that.
It's beautiful.
And, I think the joke is, what's the joke? Why do old people read the Bible more than young people? They're cramming for the final. Anyway,
that's funny. I'm trying to write it better, but I have a joke like that in my act, because I grew up in a very strong Christian household.
Oh yeah.
My mom was very hyper Christian. Yeah. And I have a joke like that about, because I think it's scary for little kids to be in a church that is only with old people. You look around to see who's praying the hardest.
I'm kind of thankful that I didn't grow up in that environment, so I don't have that. There's a burden to carry because of the way the church acts.
Yeah.
I'm glad I don't carry any of that. So when my relationship happened, it was pure. It was more like me and God.
Yeah.
We're hanging.
You're right.
This is what we're doing, and that we're going to do this, and we're going to have the relationship here, and this is how it's going to work.
That's where I find myself too. As I grew up in that environment, and I never walked away from my faith. I never walked away from religion or anything like that, but I definitely colored outside the lines. I definitely.
But here's the problem with that. You didn't color outside the lines. God created you to be you, to do the things that you do.
Well, but I did things I knew I shouldn't have been. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I hear you.
You know what I mean? And I definitely did things that...
the biggest sin was probably sitting in the church believing that whatever these people were telling you is what you should be doing with your life, when actually it's completely opposite generally, because you're the individual. I'm the individual. I mean, I sat in churches and fell for it a while, and I'm like, I know all these people have great hearts, and I know they really mean and feel what they're feeling, but there's no room. I mean, this is how my church would go. I have a 3-hour worship service, and there'd be this super awesome worship and everybody would be singing and just having a great time. And then I would walk up after that and I would say, do you love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind? Yeah. Do you love your neighbor as yourself? Yeah. See you next week. That's how it would go.
Yeah.
But of course, a church can't make money if that's right. So
no, I agree, and that's one of the bigger issues that I have with. Well, okay, so to finish my last thought, I just talking about an organic relationship. That's where I found myself, especially over the last, I'd say 4 to 5 years. Found myself getting closer to God, closer in religion. A lot of it stemmed out of like a deployment that I went on, and then also the girl that I've been with, and
no atheists in foxholes, right?
Huh?
No atheists in foxholes.
Yeah, exactly right. And just having the girl that I've been with for the last few years, and she was a huge influence on that as well. Awesome. But what I will say too is that's a bigger, and so it makes that organic relationship coming out of that, like you just said, it's more genuine, it's more personal, and I think you kind of alluded to it a little bit. I find the way that I talk to God is a lot more conversational than it is.
It should be
like whatever, like you just said, whatever the church wanted you to do to make it this almost like ritualistic, whatever. Right? I find myself doing it more conversationally based, and I feel closer out of that. And then my next point with modern church, I feel like a lot of it is. And I can almost see why they're doing it, but it's very contradictory to what I feel it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the modern churches, these pastors, preachers, whatever you want to call them, worship leaders, they base their sermon, they base their message around what can we clip to put on our social media to make us look good so that more people will come to the church. Right? And it's like, okay, I get it. I understand like the business model. It feels dirty calling church a business model, but so I understand. They do. You know what I mean? So I understand that. But at the same time, church can't always be sunshine and rainbows and God loves you, God loves everybody.
It's filled with imperfect people. I mean, we're all effed up. We're all messed up individuals. So the church is compiled of that pile of crap. So obviously there's going to be bad things happening even within the church, because the divorce rate is the same in the church than it is for someone who's not in the church. So humans are humans. What's missing is when people listen to simple scripture, like Jesus said, that people came to him and said, didn't I do this in your name? And didn't I heal in your name? And didn't I do this in your name? And didn't I do this in your name? What did Jesus say? He said, I'm sorry, man. Depart from me. I never knew you. The conversation, back to your conversation. It's about the conversation. It's about having that relationship. So when you get there, you know who he is. Because you've had the relationship with him, connected with him all your life. That's got nothing to do with the church. The church is just there. It's supposed to be a hospital for the sick. Not a social club, which is what it's become. So I believe in the church. I think the church should be there, but it should be just like the government. It should be helping with the social programs and the poor and the needy, and leave us alone. Right? The church is supposed to be the same way. The government's a paradigm of the church, and the church is supposed to just be a hospital, a place where we go. We give money, and we think these responsible people are going to hand it out to the poor and the needy and the people that need help, right? Get them in the hospital. But instead, they buy $750,000 screens to make their head bigger. So this is an issue, right? This is a huge issue, right?
Yeah.
That money should be going back to the community because it's a hospital, right? And I'm just saying right now, I believe that if you take most churches, not all churches, I'm not saying all churches, most of the big mega churches, if Jesus were to walk in one of those places as Jesus, he would be thrown out because he'd be a homeless, dirty guy who didn't speak Christianese.
Yeah.
That's a scary thought.
No, you're right. And I feel like, because at the end of the day, humans are humans. And I think that when an organization gets too big, corruption is running parallel with it. And it's unfortunately, it's just human nature.
Yeah.
And like, I forgot what podcast I was watching. But they were talking about how many churches are in America, and there's something like 350,000.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think there should be more, but if you were to find a way, exactly, smaller, because that's exactly what they're supposed to be, small, community-based
hospitals.
Exactly.
They're mental hospitals. That's what if you looked at the New Testament in Jesus as the paradigm, right? It was a hospital. People came because they had needs and their wants and desires and thoughts and would come because someone is going to reach out and touch them and try to help them, in whatever their plight is. Not make a judgment call. Well, I'm not going to give it to you because you've been homeless too long. Is that your business? Or is it important to really speak out and help the community? And, for me, I believe that the church today, because of the information highways we have, that they're teaching more solid teaching than they ever have in the in time. The problem is that that's going on, but socially, the church is a cult. You have to speak a certain way and act a certain way, and or you don't fit in. If you show up with tats up front, oh my gosh, what's going on with that guy? A gay couple sitting in the front row. Oh my gosh, we can't have that. But yeah, listen, everyone's welcome. What are you doing? So for me, socially, it's a cult. That's just the way I view it.
Because people overlook, for whatever reason, kind of like you just said about, they overlooked why didn't I do everything in your name? Well, be gone. I didn't know you. Turn away from me. I didn't know you.
Yeah.
First of all, when you brought that up, I'm very thankful in the fact that not a lot of things really scare me or terrify me that much. I get worried about some things that are going on, like socially and politically. So I read the news. I look into things too much.
Yeah.
I try to stay updated too much.
I don't watch the news on purpose.
Yeah.
I get in trouble.
But one of the things the thing that scares me the most is when my time is up, whenever that time comes, and it ends up being be gone, I never knew you. That plays in my head at least 3 to 4 times a day.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, yep. We're staying the course. We're staying on path. We're maintaining a relationship.
But people think, well, now I have to act a certain way. No, you don't. Just remember, God created you. So He comes in moments of where He will go. Okay, we're going to clean this closet out now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's slowly. It's a marathon. It's not a 50-yard dash.
Yeah, it's not a sprint.
Right? So it's like me, I'll be like cruising along and all of a sudden, okay, let's work on this. What? No. But they'll say, but if you do this, then and that's how the relationship is developed. And there'll be a lot of surprised people that realize that their relationship was all they wanted. That's all he wanted. He just wanted the relationship with you.
Right.
And the scariest part for most people is like the swan dive, like I was talking about. But if you do that, then your life will completely change. Your life will completely change if you just do that. And it's just a simple act of faith. But like I said, that runs in your head like that because the church has taught us to make that run and make us feel guilty for something we shouldn't feel guilty for. Right? For just being who we are. And I'm a human and I screw up constantly. But there's constant conversation happening.
Yeah.
Oh, damn it. But let me just tell you, there are moments when I just decided I didn't want to walk with God. And every day he would lean over my shoulder and go, hey, Kenny, love you, man. Let's rock today. Let's do some cool shit, Let's make this happen. That's the God that I know.
Yeah.
The one that's talking to me because he created me and made me go. So anyway.
No, you're completely right. And this last point I want to make about this is, Jesus probably wouldn't be accepted in the modern church, and how the modern church is very cult-esque, and it's very, you have to walk the walk, talk the talk, appear the certain ways. People overlook a lot now that, Jesus went and preached and spoke to everyone, but he spoke to everyone. He kicked it with prostitutes. He talked to the drunks.
Who did he yell at?
He yelled at the Pharisees because doing the shit wrong.
The religious people.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Wow.
So back to where we spiraled out of all of this.
Yeah, sorry.
No. I love it.
I take left turns and I'm like rabbit hole. Woo! That's me.
This is why I love podcasting. So you're 26.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm destined to be the best, not only the best that I can be, but one of the best to do it.
Yeah.
You go out to New York. Why New York? Why not like LA? It was okay. And even like, was Nashville even a thing back then?
No, well, it was, but it was good old boys.
Okay.
I got a little story about that too. But I moved to New York City because Electric Ladyland Power Station, unique 20th Street Studios were the most famous studios in the world.
Well, Electric Lady's Hendrix, right?
Well, he never actually. I'm not sure he actually recorded there, but he built it.
Right.
He was recording other places. Before he died, I don't think he actually recorded there before he died.
Oh, wow.
Which is crazy. He may have. I don't remember. Anyway, so I got a job sweeping floors at Electric Lady. And when I moved to New York, and I only had a few bucks, and New York's expensive. So I swept floors, I poured coffee, I plugged cables in, and just sat back and watched the greats do their job. It was amazing. It's an amazing time. Then I met Bob Rosa, and Bob Rosa, who's still a good friend, and we talk all the time. He took me under his wing, and I got to sit behind him while he mixed some of the biggest records you could ever imagine, and watched him mix. And to me, that's the best way to learn, is to watch somebody solve problems. Because really, mixing is a form of solving problems. You got a bunch of problems to solve. Now you got to solve why the snare drum isn't bright enough, but when you turn it up over here, it is. So how do we fix that? Then my brain's calculating hundreds of things at once. Watching him do it, I thought, oh, do you see? My ADD does turn off because I'm doing so many things, I can't think of a squirrel. I'm doing, you know what I mean? I feel complete when I'm sitting in front of a mixing console and I have 50, 60 tracks I'm managing. I can't think of anything else. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm in. And so mixing, to me, I realized that that's the way his brain was working too. So I connected the dots and said, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I mean, for reals all the time. That was a great time in my life. It was 9 years of my life. And then
I got to ask, what were some of the more notable or otherwise like moments there that stood out to you when it came to we were watching these albums get recorded?
Well, I mean, there's so many records that I did. I think it was asking Bob Clearmountain, I saw in an interview once, but he was asked, what was it like to record Avalon by Roxy Music? One of the most classic albums ever, right? And he goes, I don't remember. I wished I did. It was just another work day. and so I snapped and I go, wow, so what he's trying to tell me is pay attention. Yeah. Live in the moment, because if you don't, he goes, because he forgot what mics he used and what he didn't know. It's just another day. We're just making things go. And it ended up being like this amazing, giant, massive record.
Well, do you ever...
asking him, was there magic in the room? And he goes, he's like, there's always magic in the room. That when I'm there, I'm doing it. I'm trying to find the magic, So
that's my whole job, man.
Yeah, right. Is to find the magic. So anyway.
Well, do you ever this question could get transplanted to any moment in your career, but especially like back then, like when you're younger and you're in these spaces doing all of this, do you feel like you had enough wisdom at the time, enough raw knowledge at the time to be able to sit down like, oh, what we're making right now, this is gonna be something?
It's let me just say, that sounds egotistical or whatever, but everything I do, I feel like if I don't think this is number one, then it's like let's say take Slums of Harvard, the local band. We put out 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 songs. We've probably done closer to 20 songs. They do come in and do 2 songs, and then we work on them, and I produce and try to become a member of the band and help them form their thing. And so, was it a few weeks back, their song gets 300,000 plays in a weekend.
Shout out. I like it.
Yeah, and I'm like, what what is going on? Why, right? And so no one ever knows. So you ask them, I don't know, just happened. And other bands that I've done, like I did Noah Reed, who is he's in Schitt's Creek. He plays the boyfriend of the son, and then he's also in Outer Range. Okay. And so we did a cover song, for the end of Schitt's Creek, and it's just him on piano. It goes number 1 on iTunes. What? Why? I don't know. Just so, but to me, it was obviously Noah's one talented dude. He's he's amazing singer, amazing player, but his other records didn't go number 1. Just that one.
Right.
It's just the weirdest thing ever, So it's really hard to say when I hear songs. There are magical moments, like when I played you the Levi Platero stuff. There's moments when you're like, this is why I do this. This is why I do this. And I get excited and I think, this is going to go viral. And it just doesn't. Yeah. But it's not because it's not fantastic. In fact, there's some artists that I've done that I say to myself, in any other time in history, this guy would be in the top 10, if not number 1. But because there are 30,000 releases per day in America, 30,000 or more, you have to weed through all that crap. The good news is there's always been 30,000 bands trying to release their material, but now they can and probably shouldn't. So people have to weed through it to get to the cream, right? So,
That's funny.
You know what I'm saying, but you do know what I'm saying. So
no, it's real shit. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. We literally so every Sunday. Well, they do it every Sunday, and I go like 90% of the time for like the last 5 months. Every Sunday, there's a writing session at Dry Heat Comedy Club. Yeah. On Central, and I go. And yesterday, one of the things that was brought up in the class was, well, what's the importance of social media? How to use it to your advantage? How do you whatever? And from what I gathered, he was a comic that started here, or at least had his foothold here in a little bit, but then he ended up moving out. Now he's in LA. He runs a show every now and again at the Comedy Store. Yeah. And one of the things he brought up was like, social media is a thing. You should put your stuff out. But at the same time, you really got to gauge what you're putting out, because if you're putting out something that either doesn't get a big of a laugh as you thought it should have, or that laugh really isn't as good as you think it is, now you're just putting out an advertisement as to why someone shouldn't book you.
Exactly.
That's what you're putting out.
Exactly.
And same thing, I'd imagine same thing with music. If you're putting out a release, to you, you might think it's the best thing in the world, or you're like, well, I have to put something out to stay relevant. Yeah. To the average consumer, they're like, oh, this is the, insert song title here by X, Y, and Z is how it is. Oh, that song sucks. Next. Yeah. Not going to care.
Exactly.
Next.
Exactly. That's just the nature of it. In fact, when I do work with people, I only make a couple of rules. One is it's an ADD world. So you can't have an 8-bar intro. You have to get into
Explain what that is for people who don't know.
Like a long time before the guy starts singing. You just can't. And that's not a compromise for the song. You just have to get into the meat of it if you're a new artist. Because if someone's hearing 1 bar, 2 bar, next, next song. And then if you go to top 40 radio, pop radio, you'll notice that all the new artists, the vocal either starts immediately or within 4 beats. That's just, and if they're an older artist, they can.
Well, Dream Theater is Dream Theater for a reason, ladies and gentlemen. We all you can't model your shit off them.
Exactly, at all, period. But, I guess, I guess that being said, I don't understand why things are huge or not huge. It makes no sense to me. And the beauty of that is the record companies can't either, so they can never get a leg up. Right? Because what the record companies do is like, U2 comes out, and they make thousands of little parody bands that sound like U2.
And they also forced us all to have them on the original iPods.
Exactly.
Nobody knows why that happened either.
Well, that's a whole nother subject right there of anger, deeper anger. Yeah. So, but what I'm saying is like Led Zeppelin, right? So there's Led Zeppelin. Let's make a bunch of Led Zeppelins. So that's what the record company does.
Right.
It says, well, I see 10 Led Zeppelins now. You know, well, no, I don't. I mean, it's like we live in this world right now where everything's a remake. It's like, how many freaking Batmans do you need? How many Spider-Mans do we need?
I'm a huge Batman fan, and even I'm like, okay, I think we can
have enough Batman.
There's other DC characters, guys. Green Lantern, you're there.
Yeah, hello.
Come on now.
Yeah.
But no, you're completely right, and I think like,
and music's the same way.
Yeah.
Sequels.
Well, because there's genres to play in, obviously, and there's subgenres and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
But there's genres to play in, and I think the best way that I can, and it's just because this is the art form that I dive myself so much into now.
Yeah.
Now that I'm actually practicing it, is I was having this conversation with a local comic. His name is Jake Otero, funny motherfucker.
Yeah.
And we were talking about he's like 5'2", 5'3".
Yeah.
And we're talking about short jokes. And he was like, yeah, I'm trying to stay away, or I'm trying to move away, because he had a lot of short jokes in his act, but he's like, I try to move away from it because of this, that, and the other. I'm like, well, okay, yeah. I'd imagine like if you're somebody who loves comedy and you think short jokes are unoriginal, is it because you're watching a lot of short comedians? Like if you just watch Brad Williams on repeat, I'd imagine you're gonna get sick of short jokes. Just like in the same way, if this is not a knock on her, because I think she's funny, but if you watch Nikki Glaser on repeat, you're probably gonna get really bored of sex jokes.
Yeah.
So, but what makes them relevant is your perspective, how tapped into you, to your perspective, to your voice, to your thought process, and then your short jokes or your whatever music you're trying to make,
Yeah.
if it's coming uniquely from your perspective, and you can honestly say to yourself that this is original, this is your original thought, you're not, I mean, because you can be inspired, you can be
back to the swan dive. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, you can be inspired by people, you can take influence, but if you can honestly say that this is your thought process, this is your idea, and this is coming from your soul, it's going to be unique to you, and it can be different enough. But yeah, I mean, out of the 90s into the early 2000s, how many Nirvana lookalikes came out and survived?
But that's the scary part. The surviving is what scares me, because then people try to do that.
Yeah.
Like I have bands come in and they go, we want to do something commercial. I said, I don't know what that means.
Right.
Because if you're going into a recording to sell records based on familiarity, you're going to fail.
Well, not only that,
every single time.
You want to do some commercials, and okay, then are your parents connected like they should be?
Yeah. Is this going to be the credit roll in a movie?
Yeah.
That sounds like
right.
Yeah. So and that's a possibility. There's ways to do that, but the bottom line is most one-hit wonders came because they sounded like somebody else, and they managed to fool everyone that they were them, and then found out they weren't. And, oh, well, they're not even that band, you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it seems like, you know, ego-y to say these things, but the bottom line is, before Led Zeppelin, there was no Led Zeppelin. Before U2, there was no U2. Before the Beatles, there was no Beatles. Before the Rolling Stones, there was no Rolling Stones. They're doing exactly what you said in comedy. They are themselves, and they engage themselves. And my grandfather once said to me, you can't be famous, Kenny, if you don't have an opinion. Got to have an opinion to be famous, to have fans.
Right.
Because the fans have to believe in you, right? Yeah. They have to believe that you're...
They latch themselves onto you.
Onto your ideas and your thoughts and who you are. Same with music. They latch yourself. So you have to have an opinion to have fans.
How do you help artists find out what their opinions are? Not in the sense like you know...
By doing exactly what you just said. Tell them, look, dude, be you. I have people come in and they say, hey, you know, let me play you my song. Okay, listen to the song. Okay, that sounds like John Mayer. What do you sound like? Play me a song that you think is more you than anything you have.
Right.
And they play it and you're like, okay, that's the song we should record. Not the song that sounds like a John Mayer song or like anybody else's song, but you, individually, developing you. And when I say that, I don't mean like it comes out of thin air. We all stand on shoulders of the giants, right? And the older you get, the more giants' shoulders you're standing on, and the more you're deriving and pulling things in that you like about all these other things. So that becomes you. So the reason that what I do is an old guy's game is because I've been around for 10-year periods, 60 years, 43 years I've been doing it. So 43 years, for 50 years, 60 years, I've been listening to music. For 40 of that, I've been listening to music intently. So that being said, it's like an older comedian. It's like, imagine Don Rickles coming out now, man. He would be roasted and thrown in hell for being funny, I mean, a lot of the guys I know would be roasted for just speaking their opinions, just normal opinions. I mean, I know this sounds weird, but I think that when a boy gets out of high school, he should have to work in a 70s construction zone for at least 6 months. This would desensitize anything that he has that's going to make him not become who he needs to be.
That's funny.
And you can't be afraid of laughter and fun. Like I said, the reason that America is so successful is because of our comedy. It's because of the way we can rub wings and still make fun of each other, but still be rubbing wings, because that's what we do. The beauty of the experiment of America was based on that. It was based on fudging each other and messing around and joisting and arm beating. That there's some violent and bad slave things that happen and all that, and I understand that. But I'm talking about in the last 30 or 40 years, we've come a long way, and the great experiment of all these different cultures coming together is the release of the joke, the general statement, the stupid. Let's laugh at this. I'm not saying to be violent or mean. I'm saying just tell jokes about everything.
Well, that's one of my. There weren't many, but that's one of my favorite elements of being in the military. Was like, no matter what your background was, no matter what the color of your skin was, and obviously you had a couple of assholes that were true
well, that's
racist.
Hate. You can't regulate that.
That's a
thing.
It's
just hate.
But
stupid.
generally speaking, once you're going through these trying experiences with people, one of the best ways to get through all of that is humor. What are some of the quickest things to make fun of? Each other. And that's what made, and that's what gave so much fuel to the civil rights movement, was you had a bunch of just people of color in general, not just black people, but just people of color in general coming back from World War II, where they're spending all this time with people that are white, black, brown, Asian, whatever. They're going off and they're fighting.
They integrate.
They're fighting together, and they come back to a society that's kind of turning their back on them because of the color of the skin. Like, wait a minute. Do we not understand, how nonsensical this is? That's why you find a lot of people that were on the side of the civil rights movement, a lot of the white people, were veterans. Because they were like, wait a minute, that dude, he's the reason a crowd didn't blow my head off.
That's something that's never spoken about, but that's an absolute truth. The thing is that there are several people that I look up to. Martin Luther King Jr. was one of them. I read almost everything he's ever done. And the content of the character, based on not your color, but the content of your character, is a lost thing now. It's turned from that into backwards racism. It's flipped in the other direction.
Well, a lot of it's projection.
Huh?
A lot of it's projection. It's like, what's this fake version of yourself that you can thrust into whether it's like your workplace or your social media.
Exactly.
Or it's like, how good can I make myself look?
And racism would end if we just quit talking about it.
Yeah.
And just be people. It's like, the worst thing I've heard is, I don't see color. Yes, you do. It's what you do with it that matters. Don't lie to me. The guy walks in the room and he's black or he's Spanish or whatever, Chinese, he walks in, you see that.
Yeah.
But who cares?
Yeah.
It's what you do with it. It's not, well, I don't see color. It's like, you're the stupidest man Are you blind? I don't see you with a white stick. I'm not sure. But it's what you do with it that matters, which is nothing. You just be a person, and there's this person, and okay, it's fine.